prosperous and sustainable economic life across all our member countries. In the midst of the rising environmental threats faced by the whole world, there is an indispensable role that food and beverage industry has witnessed a lot of development during the last 10 years. Moreover, it has experienced huge fluctuations during the pandemic time. In this regard, our webinar that will be discussing the sustainability, global trends, and the way forward in the food and beverage industry that aims to explore the industry and shed the light on the recent trends and developments that exist. So let's begin with an introduction of our distinctive speakers who are joining us today. Please welcome with me Mrs. Marie Chantal, Assistant Vice President and Global Head of Food and Industry Affairs at Nestle. Welcome, Ms. Marie. And Mr. Abba Gabriel Sankaria, Registrar General of Cooperatives, Department of Cooperative Development, Ministry of Agriculture, the Gambia. Welcome, Mr. Abba. So let me introduce Mrs. Marie Chantal. Mrs. Marie holds an MBA from University Laval and Bachelor's in Nutritional Science from McGill University and is a registered dietitian. Among her roles, she provides leadership on corporate food and nutrition agenda and policy work relating to regenerative food system, responsible marketing, industry benchmarking. Professional for several regions at the World Bank Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition in Switzerland, the United Nations World Food Program in Haiti, country director for Helen Keller International in Guinea and Sierra Leone, and the Center Canadien d'Études de Coopération Internationale in Mali and the Eastern Ontario Health Unit in her home country, Canada. Welcome, Mrs. Marie. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a real honor and pleasure to be with you today. I couldn't be more excited about this topic. As you heard, I've been with Nestle for the past 10 years in the food and beverage industry, but it's also very dear to my heart because of my humanitarian work in the early years of my career, and having worked in many of the countries where the businesses are located and our participants are located. So nutrition is my passion. Food is also a passion. So I think and sustainability and sustainable development is definitely the red thread of my career. So let me talk about what's happening in the food and beverage industry. And for those of you on the call who are in the sector, what are the opportunities that lies in terms of offering balanced diets to consumers? I'm also excited about being on this webinar today because at the moment, nutrition is the only indicator that is not part of ESG indicators. So I think that while ESG is very important, how can we use the power of our businesses and the power of our organizations to make it work for people who want a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle? So let me go back to the opportunities. There is a huge opportunity for food and beverage companies to provide more nutritious food. Why do I say that? Actually, this is based on external data, but also some research that we have done in 15 markets in Nestle, where it shows that more than 90% of people want to feed their families with a balanced diet. But at the same time, they face many challenges, which is cost being the first one, time. There's also treats. People, they love to taste, they want to treat themselves. And then just basically social gatherings. I mean, I think in many countries where people are located, food is such an essential part of our culture and how we celebrate successes. And therefore, we don't only eat to nourish the body, we also eat to actually enjoy, celebrate, and just be part of our cultural existence. So that's the challenges that they face. And then there's the reality. Basically, people want to eat a balanced diet, but this is what they do. And I'm really glad that you brought up the pandemic, because we saw how the pandemic actually influenced diets very much. So basically, what we see is that during the pandemic, people kind of offered themselves treats. They treated themselves because it was a way to cope with all the stress that was going on. But the reality that they face today is that right now, 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. And therefore, and then what has happened also is that you have probably more than 50% of the world's population that by 2030 will be overweight or obese. So you have this overnutrition, but you also have a lot of undernutrition, with more than 2 billion people, particularly children and women, that suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. So really, when we look at the situation, we see that the poor, the women, and their children are the most at risk of malnutrition, whether overnutrition or undernutrition. So to me, this is why I say businesses have a good opportunity to respond to consumers' aspiration and do good while doing well. So the other part that I think that is important for us to realize as food businesses is that the landscape and their stakeholders' expectations are changing. I've talked about the deteriorating nutrition landscape, but we're also very much aware of all the supply chain and inflation disruption, with cost of food being, particularly of more nutritious food, having increased substantially in the last few years. But the new part that didn't exist when I started at Nestlé is that more and more investors are actually looking into this and asking food and beverage companies to basically diminish the risk or buffer the risk that are linked to unhealthy food, high food prices, and anticipated regulation. Because last but not least, and I think many of us face this, is that we have more and more governments around the world that seeing the impact of unhealthy diets on the health of the population and the productivity of the workforce are putting more regulation, particularly around marketing to children. So I think this is where the opportunity on one side is answer consumer demand, but on the other side, buffer your companies against legislation and also answering investors' expectation. So I think for me, how can we do that? Because many of us have a broad range. I think at least here in Nestlé, we have like 2,000 brands that covers from beloved chocolate to our iconic Maggie cubes to more nutritious product to all the way to medical nutrition. So we have a very broad range of products. And what we believe in is that all these products can fit as part of a balanced diet. What we need to do is, and what we want to do is basically how can we offer more nutritious foods for people? And then at the same time, for the more indulgent part of our portfolio, how can we guide people to understand where these foods fit as part of a balanced diet? And part of that is also inspired by the new guidelines that was published by the WHO and the FAO recently on healthy diets. If you haven't seen it, please do go. It's a really nice pyramid, and it really simple, where it talks about adequacy, variety, but also moderation for the products that are more indulgent. And so maybe probably the question you're asking is like, okay, Nestle, what are you doing now? How are you doing, or what would be your suggestions to basically answer these consumer demand and the external environment pressure? So my first suggestion will be embed this in your business strategy. It's important. This is not a CSR. This is actually a business opportunity. Embed this in your overall business strategy, and also ask your brands to pick one part and basically bring it to life, whether it is tailored nutrition, whether it is children, whether it is responsible marketing. I think you have to illustrate and bring your strategy through your brands. My other suggestion, my second suggestion would be definitely transparency. Because for two reasons. One is transparency builds trust. The other one is what gets measured gets acted upon. And therefore, what we have done at Nestle at the beginning of this year is that we are the first company to transparently disclose the nutritional value of our entire portfolio. And we have decided to do this against a government-endorsed nutrient profiling model. We use the HSR for numerous reasons. One of them is that it's used by the Access to Nutrition Index to benchmark 25 largest food and beverage companies. We have decided not to mark our own marks because then it allows a way to have a stable benchmark throughout all the companies, and basically really to build the trust with external stakeholders that what we're putting out there is scientifically validated. I would strongly encourage you to do that exercise and look transparently at the nutritional value of your portfolio, and look at what are the opportunities for you to grow the more nutritious part of your portfolio. In terms of maybe the more indulgent part of your portfolio, I think there's a lot of opportunities also for you. And so my third recommendation would be, how can you do some responsible marketing of your more indulgent part of your portfolio? I think first and foremost, just because nutrition has such a great impact on children, one of the measures that we're adopting is definitely on marketing to kids, and we have raised voluntarily the age of our marketing to kids policy up to 16 years. We have done this, so our more indulgent products, so particularly beverage with added sugar, our confectionery, and our ice cream cannot be marketed directly to children under 16. There is no marketing whatsoever to children under the age of 6. And therefore, this is something that we have voluntarily adopted. I know that many countries, through industry association, there are voluntarily pledges. And what I would say is that if Nestle can raise the age of its policy up to 16, I think all of us can. And I would certainly encourage you to look at doing so. In terms of responsible marketing, other things that you can do, you could look at front of pack portion guidance, particularly for your more indulgent portfolio. You can look at portion control, particularly for your more indulgent. So I've seen that in many countries now, the snacks are offered in 100-calorie portion size. So you can still enjoy, you can still have a treat, but then you can definitely look at these opportunities. And I've heard a very famous professor of marketing who says, how can we make small beautiful? How can we make small attractive? And I think that's a beautiful question to ask ourselves. How can we make our indulgent small yet attractive to our consumers? And last but not least, I think for me, what I would definitely recommend and that we are doing is how can you invest in innovation to put more nutritious product out there, renovate your products. Of course, you have to take your consumers with you, because if you reduce too fast the salt, the fat, the sugar in it, then your consumer will react, and you may be worried that they will move to another. But if you take them along with you and reduce gradually, I think we can have a significant impact on the health of our consumers. And then last but not least, in many of the countries where I think the Islamic Chamber of Commerce is located, micronutrient fortification, enriching food with vitamins and minerals that are lacking in people's diet. Again, 2 billion people are lacking essential nutrients such as iron, which is the largest, and iron deficiency, which is the largest nutritional deficiency in the world. Vitamin A, where I have seen children that still go blind because of a lack of vitamin A. Iodine, where it can reduce the IQ of children when the mother is deficient, and that's irreversible. So there is so much that costs so little, because micronutrient fortification really doesn't cost a lot of money, but can do so much good. So in all, I think that would be my suggestions. Please do invest in nutrition. There is a business opportunity for it, and do it responsibly, because this is what our consumers are expecting of us. So voila, that would be the end of it. Should we take questions now or later?
Actually, I'm saving the questions for later. Will you be with us, or are you going for the other meeting that you said? So thank you. It's very informative presentation. So now let's move to our second speaker, Mr. Aba Gabriel Sankari. Mr. Aba has a bachelor's in agribusiness management from National Tong University of Science and Technology, Taiwan, and agriculture science bachelor's, Agriculture Science University of the Gambia, and a higher diploma in agriculture, the Gambia College. Mr. Aba has been nominated as a board member of Shelter for Life, international NGO and USAID funded, operating in 3 countries, Senegal, Gambia, Bissau. Besides that, he has been nominated as a task force member by the Ministry of Agriculture on the preparation of a project conceptualization paper to launch rice industrialization pilot project in Central River region, the South. Moreover, he has been nominated as a member of the National Review Committee for the Youth-Based Matching Grant of the Resilience of Organizations for Transformative Smallholders Agriculture Projects. Also, he has been nominated as a Matching Grant Selection Committee member of the Gambia Inclusive and Resilient Agriculture Value Chain Development Project. Moreover, he has been focal person for the Ministry of Agriculture in the execution of the Japanese food assistance to the Gambia, and the chairperson for the National Organizing Committee for the preparation of World Food Day commemoration, and many more roles and achievements. Welcome, Mr. Aba. Now the floor is yours. You can start. Mr. Aba?
Hello, are you getting me?
You can start now. The floor is yours.
Yes, I say, are you getting me now? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol, for that introduction. And I want to thank Mary for that presentation. as we agreed last month, I want to look at climate change and its impact on food security, with particular reference to the OIC, member countries. We all know nowadays it's all about climate change. We are seeing events, day in, day out, because of food security. So for the purpose of this 15 minutes presentation, I have 16 slides, but I'm not going to go through them because of time. First of all, as I say, my topic here is climate change and its impact on food security. Particularly,
we cannot.
Yes.
Sorry, we cannot see the presentation. If you can do share screen.
If I can do.
There is a button in the below bar called share screen. You can use it to share with us your presentation.
Yes, I send it. Well, unless if I have to switch, I send it to you. Did you see it?
Okay. So you want me to? Okay. I will do the sharing for you. Okay. Just give me.
Yes.
Give me like a minute.
Pardon?
I'm sharing the presentation now.
Okay. Yes. So can I go ahead?
Yes, you can.
Yes. I look at food security in perspective. In climate change, overview, and its importance. Okay, I'm just going on the second template. That is the table of content. Adaptation strategies, international cooperation, and of course, recommendation. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Yes. We all know climate change refers to long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns. This as you can see on this diagram, it is affected by both physical and, of course, a policy. On the other hand, you can see climate change where we have the biophysical processes, that is the vegetation structure or cover, and then the human impact, that is the carbon emission, ecological restoration. We have also seen carbon sequestration. Can you go to the next slide? Yes, here, this is just a picture from WMO. Just showing the effect of climate change. That is the risks, the extreme events, and related impact. As you could see, it is estimated that 8.2 million undernourished people, partly due to the drought. I think Madam Mari has elaborated on this. You can see they are saying plus 35 million people will be affected by flood. We have ozone acidification, we have climate change threatening peatlands and ecosystem. They are talking of plus 101,600 deaths associated with heat waves and wildfires. Then they say out of 883,000 internally displaced people, which is linked to floods and 29% linked to droughts. Alongside this also, we have seen the effects of wars also. Decrease in global ozone oxygen continues, and then of course you can see again 2 million people displaced by the weather and climate linked disasters. Can you go to the next slide? Yes, here I'm just giving an overview about OIC, that is it's an intergovernmental organization founded in 1966 with 57 member states, then 48. A administrative center at Jeddah, and then the main objective of this organization, of course, to safeguard and protect the interests of Muslim world in the spirit of promoting international peace and harmony. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Kara. Next slide.
Yes, I'm trying. Just
Okay, here I'm just trying to give an overview of food security with its tenants. You know that is food security and its component. We all know what food security is all about. According to FAO 1996, exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. I mean, to meet their dietary needs and food preferences, you know, for an active life. I think Marie could attest to this. If you look at the tenets of food security, availability, access, stability, and utilization. As far as availability is concerned, we're talking of domestic production, you know, in-country, food stock, imports, and of course, food aid. Access, here we're talking of political and economic social factors, equitable distribution, market, of course, and infrastructure, affordability, and then also the purchasing power. Now, the system stability here, which depend on maintenance of all the three pillars. No risk of loss of supply due to economic or political. Utilization, I think food security will not be complete if this aspect or if this component, you know, is not fully achieved. I think Murray has dwelt on that, you know, during her presentation, and this depends on the food safety, the food quality, nutritional knowledge, and of course the proper preparations. You know, I think these are all things we have to look at. If we want definitely to attain food security, not able to attain one of these components, it means that there is no food security. You know, can you go to the next slide? Yes, next slide, please. Here I'm just trying to bring portray the importance of food security for human well-being and socio-economic development. I think Murray could still attest to this. If you look at food security in general, there are factors, of course, which contribute to it. I mentioned it in the last slide, and here again, I'm just emphasizing it more as far as well-being, human well-being is concerned, and socio-economic development. We look at education, health, hygiene, and of course, sanitation, nutrition. We look at agricultural development and environmental conservation. All these contribute to food security. Likewise, research, advocacy, training, conferences and workshops. We also look at farm and non-farm incomes. You know, these are also very, very vital. If we're talking of food security. Can we go to the next slide? Yes, here, I'm sorry that my slides are a bit not organized, but probably after the presentation, I will organize them because I'm jumping from food security and climate change, because these are the issues, you know, we are discussing at this point in time. What is the risk for our region and for region now and in the future? If we don't act now, the costs and consequences will grow. Looking at the environmental aspect, the economic aspect, and of course the health aspect. These are areas we have to really focus on. If you want to, see to it that there is resilience to climate change, and of course, culminating to food security, which is a problem, which is a big issue as far as most OIC member countries are concerned. I don't want to go into the detail, but as you can see on the slides, these are things we need to look at. if we want to definitely, build resilience, of course, to climate change and to ensure that, food security, is attained. Can we go to the next slide? Yes, this here I'm just trying to depict the vulnerability of OIC countries to climate change. As you can see, most OIC are developing nations which are more susceptible to climate impact. These are mainly economic vulnerability and geographic vulnerability. Livelihood types that are regarded as particularly climate sensitive. Continuous smallholder farmers, pastoralists and fishing. Like for us in the Gambia, we currently at the ministry we have a project. They call it roots. Resilience of transformation of smallholder farmers to climate change resilience. So these are some of the things I just brought in. As far as the vulnerability of OIC member countries are concerned. Still, as you can see on the next slide, the effect of climate change on agriculture depends on the rate and severity of change. And the rate farmers can adopt to the changes. Changes in, of course, agricultural productivity, changes in temperature and rainfall could reduce yield of the produce. Impact to soil and water of soil and water resources, eroding soil and depleting soil nutrient. Hypoxia. This is killfish and shellfish, which in turn harm the coastal societies and economy that depend on those ecosystems. Can we go to the next slide? Yes. Can you go to the next slide? Here I'm also just portraying, I'm just portraying this diagram from FAO that low-income and deficit countries suffering most. That is 60 to 65% of income goes to food, contrary to developed. That is contrary to developed nation where it is only 10 to 20%. Many drivers are relevant to developed countries as well. OIC countries are some of the most impacted. Ironically, OIC countries are some of the most agricultural endowed, but as I explained earlier, why are we encountering the vagaries of climate change, affecting the attainment of our food security, which is also one of the major causes of crisis, in our, in most of our OIC member countries. Yes, the next slide here, I'm just trying to depict loss of biodiversity, which of course, have primary drivers, which could also have an effect, on our food security. Request, I don't want to go into some of these drivers as they are already indicated. In human, habitat loss, invasive species, overexploitation, population, climate change associated with, of course, global warming. Next slide, please. Here, I'm just trying to bring, because I think right now our focus is on adaptation, because we are hit by climate change. So I think adaptation should be our major focus. As far as climate issues are concerned at this point in time. Mitigation, we all know these are actions to reduce emission that cause climate change. We have sustainable transportation from the transportation, energy efficiency, and of course renewable. Adaptation, flood production, disaster management, and business continuity, and of course infrastructure update. I mean, if you look at the center of these two, strategies, I think these are things we should definitely look at, if we want to achieve food security, education, look at food systems. I think in the Gambia here, this is one of our priorities. Even yesterday in my office here, I welcome one lead consultant who is working on our food systems. Water conservation, of course, we have to focus on it. Complete communities, new energy system, and of course, urban forests. I think these are areas we should definitely focus on. So that the vagaries or the effect of climate change, at least tackled to an extent. Next slide. International cooperation on climate change. This is just, I'm just also portraying at this. To see, where we want to be. As far as climate change is concerned. I think we are all aware that the UN 78 General Assembly just concluded where the SDGs were looked upon, as to how far we are as far as those SDGs are concerned. Though the focus of this general meeting was on health, especially that is how to tackle tuberculosis. But if you look at this diagram, as you may see, we are saying that at least by 2050, we need net zero emission, and climate resilient is the target. And as you may see, we are in 2023 now, global stock take. And then we hope that by 25, at least communicate new or updated NDCs. And then 2028 also global stock, and 2030 the same. So by 2050, I think that is the target. We are also aware that there was this African preparatory climate change meeting in Kenya last month. A lot of issues came up, especially finance as far as climate change issues are concerned. I think financing will also go a long way, in trying to help some of the threatened island nations, to be able to overcome the vagaries of climate change. You're talking of sea level rise, especially in Gambia also, that's also our concern. We're trying to see how we can avoid, because as you may know, our capital is an island city. So we also have to be very cognizant, as far as these climate talks are concerned. So that we can at least, build resilience, towards that. Can you go to the second to last? Here, I just brought these 10 key drivers as far as food insecurity is concerned. We know that agricultural production will have to increase by 70% by 2050 to feed a population of some 9 billion people, according to the World Bank. The Fossil Project report warns that in the next 40 years, agricultural land will be lost to urbanization, desertification, sea level rise, as I indicated earlier, and increasingly salty water. About 24% of 11.5 billion hectares of vegetated land has already undergone human-induced soil degradation. So you see the drivers, on the slide. The one that is population growth, affluence, bioenergy, rising input prices, national subsidies, lack of investment, climate change, loss of agricultural land, rich and poor divide, gluttony or waste, and then speculation. Here, my last slide, I just try to bring this recommendation. I mean, as you could see, this has been looked at different perspectives. Yeah, the farm and non-farm sector, if you're talking of inclusive growth for sustainable development, we all know what sustainable development means. That is development that takes care of present needs without compromising the ability of future generation, to take care of their own needs. So I think that being the case, we have to factor in all these areas, indicated on the diagram, so that, we could be both food insecure and at the same time being climate resilient. Policy is also very important nowadays. Because policy is affecting most issues, particularly in OIC countries. So I think, Katra, this is the short presentation I just I was able to prepare for this webinar, and I hope for the subsequent webinars to come, I will also look into other pertinent, topics, which is affecting most of the OIC member countries right now. So on that note, I thank you so much and will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abba, for the informative presentation. Now, let me ask the question. I will start with Mrs. Marie. Experience. What are the needed policies or changes in policies that has to be implemented in order to motivate the healthy, nutritious consumption of food in the OIC countries?
Hi, thanks. This is actually an excellent question. And I think first and foremost, when we talk about policies, it's important to have an all-in society approach. And so how can we consult all stakeholders to come up with a policy? The other thing is, I think that policies need to make sense for the people. It's very important that we adopt a people or consumer-centric approach in the development of those policies. And therefore, this is why having a wide range of stakeholders in the development of policy is important. So, of course, a policy needs to be grounded in science, but also need to be grounded in being realistic and meaningful. So many policies don't work because either all key stakeholders have not been able to provide their perspective, or that they are based more on ideologies than actually in science. And therefore, that would be my recommendation, is making sure that they are people-centric, that they're meaningful for the people, and that they include all concerned stakeholders to make sure that they're realistic. They can be stretching, but then they can also be realistic and achievable. And last but not least, for a policy to work, you actually need monitoring and implementation. And therefore, it's not enough to just have a policy, but we all need to work together to make sure that these policies are implemented and executed. And at the end, evaluated. Are they efficient? Are they working?
Yes. Another question that is asking about the marketing the products for the under 16 age segment. How you did that? Like, what was the tools? How you made it?
Another excellent question. So we've been working on responsible marketing to children for a number of years. So this was not the first iteration. We had a first iteration of that policy quite a number of years ago, where we started at 12. A few years ago, we increased at 13. And then when the WHO and UNICEF have published recommendations to go to 18, we have looked at how can we contribute to that recommendation. Therefore, what we have done is to look at what's right for children. That's the first thing. What can we do to contribute to that? But we also looked at some of the business challenges that we have. And so we've looked at, so we have included all our businesses. We've consulted our businesses. We also consulted with external key opinion leaders as to what really counts. And we also pushed ourselves. We said, can we do it at 18? And I will be very honest with you. One of the reasons why we could not make it to 18 is that at the moment, we need help from particularly social media platforms, because the way that they are conducted in terms of the age threshold is anything that we would put an age threshold to 18 would precipitate our advertising on platforms that would be of violent or sexual nature. And of course, that would mean, that would not be at all in line with the brand essence that we have. And therefore, this is why I call on, and I repeat my message of, let's all put our heads together to see how we can achieve that, because there are some challenges that we cannot address just by ourselves. So in all, I would say that this is how we achieved raising the age gradually to the marketing to children policy up to 16.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you, Mrs. Marie. Let me move to Mr. Abba. We have a question about, based on your work experience, how can the industrial policies and agricultural policies in the OIC countries adapt or change in order to achieve the 1.5 Celsius degree and the net zero emission carbon that has been declared by the COP forums? So how the OIC countries, or what do they need in order to make their industrial and agricultural policies adapt to these changes and, I would say, save the environment?
Yes, Qatar, during these climate conferences, negotiations will be done here and there between the big and small countries. And I know one of the issues right now, as far as tackling climate change is concerned, the talk of finance. I remember I attended climate change only once. It was in 2009 in Denmark, Copenhagen. Bella Center. That was the only time I was lucky to attend climate change. But that doesn't mean that I don't follow subsequent, climate conferences, particularly this recent one for African countries that took place in Kenya. I think in that conference, the emphasis is on financing, how to finance, for smaller nations to be able to, climate issues. I think policies, yes, countries will come up with policies. It's one thing to come up with a policy, but it's also one thing to implement the policy. If the necessary drivers are not there for the policy to be implemented, then it means that policy is useless. So I think bigger nations should at least respect the policies for smaller nations as far as tackling climate change issues are concerned. If they are not, then our conferences, our climate conferences and all whatnot will all go in vain. Let bigger nations respect policies formulated by smaller nations to tackle climate change issues. And if any pledge is made, let them see to it that it is honored. because we have seen that bigger nations will pledge, during climate negotiation or during climate conferences, we will do this, we will do that. But in the end, it never happened. So I think implementation is something which we should be very serious with, particularly with the bigger nation, because smaller nations don't have the means, they don't have the financial, muscle, to take care of their climate issues. So I think this is what I can say as far as that question is concerned. I don't know whether I have answered it well or not.
Yes. So providing more finance for the nations in order to be able to adapt and save the environment, and involving and formulating the nutrition policies to be aware and involving the people and their interest in it are the main two recommendations, I would say, that we provide for the policymakers in our countries in order to take care when they tackle the food and beverage industries. And by saying this, it moves us to the end of the webinar. So let me thank you, our panelists, for participating today. It was really amazing session and very informative. Thank you, Mrs. Marie. Thank you, Mr. Abba. And for all the people joining, there will be a new theme about another topic in the industry for the OIC countries. That will be in the next month. So please do not forget to follow our website and social media platforms to know more about our upcoming sessions and themes. And finally, it was a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.